I joke that Flickr is a bit of a grandma of the internet because it's 21 years old and it's charming and people are fond of it. But I think people are looking again for services that take care and aren't just exploitative, you know. And for me, that's a good sign. This is an important cultural collection that we've amassed almost by benign neglect. But, you know, there's tens of billions of images of humans and Earth now hiding in this social media platform. And my argument with the foundation is that we need to treat that with care.
I'm very excited to have George Oates on Revolution.Social. George runs the Flickr Foundation and was part of the team that created Flickr and really critical to the way in which Flickr understood how to cultivate a community, sort of at the beginning of social media, the beginning of Web 2.0. And through that worked with museums and worked with the Flickr Commons and worked with Flickr's adoption of Creative Commons. So I'm so happy to have you on here. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
For people who don't know, can you just give us a little sense on what Flickr was and is and how it came to be?
Sure. Well, Flickr.com turned 21 years old this year. It launched in February of 2004 as this wonky, weird-ass photo sharing thing that actually emerged from a game called Game Neverending, which was a brilliant and beautiful, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, an MPOG, whatever. Game Neverending was about social connections and moving around the world together, making things together, you know, collaborating in order to get better stuff. So, for example, if you and I were friends in Game Neverending and I had an egg and you had a frying pan, together we could make an omelette, which is delightful. So the community within Game Neverending, those humans actually seeded the first launch of Flickr.com, which I think is an important point to mention because Flickr.com was about sharing pictures initially, not necessarily even photographs, but just, you know, crap from the web.
Yeah.
But in order to be entertaining, you know. So you'd share a funny picture in a chat window or whatever. But as digital photography was growing around that time, people started sharing photos about their own lives. And that's when stuff got really fun. So yeah, that was in 2004. Today, Flickr's grown. It's still very active. There's millions of people still using it every day. And there's tens of billions of images in it today. So it's this vast visual culture collection that's 21 years old.
It's funny, the video game converts into stuff. You know, Instagram was this game called Bourbon that did a Foursquare like check-in thing. And of course, Cal and Stuart, part of the Flickr team, eventually left Yahoo after it had been sold and tried to make this game Glitch, which didn't become a massive success itself, but pivoted into becoming Slack. And now we all have this as this workplace tool. So I think it's fascinating when the thing we think we're building isn't the thing that it ends up being. And we try and make games and try and make social interactions. You touched on a point which is super interesting. When people talk about social media, they talk about all these platforms and apps. We're sometimes so technologically determinist, and we think about the features it has and how it works. But Flickr's core culture comes out of those users who are playing the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was such an interesting way to create community and connection from the outset. You know, a lot of social media platforms work very hard to try to have people able to kind of recognize each other once they're in the service. I mean, I don't know if you ever played Game Neverending, but it was a wacky, fun, entertaining, almost erudite community that was really humorous and well-connected and international. But it was very interesting crossing the bridge between a fantasy environment into the real life environment. Like I never forget the day
it was like a visual mud. That's what I remember. I didn't play it very often, but it felt like sort of the sort of web interactive version of like those text-based adventure games.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was, I mean, it was a lot of a cruft around a chat window. So another way to describe it. But I'll never forget the day when Eric Costello, who was developing the platform in the team from New York, shared a photograph in this weird UI of his kids playing on a beach. And this was in 2003 or something, which is over 20 years ago now. But at that moment, it was really amazing to see a photo that had just been taken on a beach in New York, you know? And saying that out loud makes me feel old. But at that moment, it was really amazing, really amazing.
Because it wasn't easy to share media
No.
at all like that, especially in a social way. We thought of, we had blogs, which we post text a lot of.
Yeah.
But we didn't have podcasts. We didn't have video that you could share easily.
I think the instant nature of it was the amazing thing. Oh, Eric's actually on a beach right now with his kids. It was crazy. And that just popped up in a window in sort of the Flickr Game Neverending interface thing.
How did you go from, oh my God, we can share photos in the chat window in the game, to we should make a social media app around photos?
The transition from Game Neverending to Flickr.com was actually pretty blunt, because how we were talking about eggs and frying pans before, we just sort of replaced those game objects with images. It was really just a pretty straight swap from one thing to the other. And I mean, you should have seen the early interfaces of Flickr.com. It was really bizarre because we had to make everybody open that app, because that's where you shared the photos. And then we realized, actually, no.
Because Flickr was an app.
Yeah.
It was like a space inside the game.
Yes, exactly. Well, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
But there was no kind of web pages to look at or anything like that. So then Cal and I set about just making web pages for things like a photo page and my photo stream and, that kind of stuff, which is so basic now. But actually, it was very quick to spin those interfaces out. And actually, that was really fun to work so quickly. So we made things like, tag clouds and calendar view and, all these simple ways to navigate these photo collections.
Tag clouds are what eventually gets, the hashtag gets added to it, and eventually becomes this thing.
Oh, yeah.
But the stuff that Chris Messina said, well, let's just call it a hashtag, that really comes from the Flickr community trying to be a way in which people could categorize their content.
I mean, that's a whole interesting aspect of the success of Flickr, in my opinion, is that people could just describe their pictures however they wanted. There was no overarching taxonomic, infrastructure. There was no suggestion even of how to curate stuff.
Yep.
That all just emerged from agreement across the Flickr membership. So if we wanted to use the same word to describe a photo, suddenly our two pictures were joined together.
Yeah.
And that sounds quite simple, but compared with the systems that preceded Flickr, that was quite unique and quite radical, actually. And I think that emergent sort of linguistic description is one of my favorite things about that collection.
Flickr also had a really interesting way in which you could have people who were contacts, people who were friends, people who were family. It had this sort of the first place I saw this emerging sort of concentric circles of different things, things you might want to share with friends but not family, or vice versa.
Yeah. Well, that actually came from Game Neverending. That structure sort of, here's people I know and here are people that are close to me.
Yep.
Game Neverending also actually had enemies, which was funny, but we decided not to bring that over to Flickr. That sense of privacy, I think that maps straight onto photos really neatly. Like I remember the session where we were just sort of sitting around a table and Stuart was saying that he wanted Flickr to feel like you were looking at a pile of photos on a table.
Yep.
And, the functionality around what we built was supposed to mirror that. You can arrange them in various orders, like whether it's the order they were taken or at a certain event or whatever. You can turn them around and write on them. You can point at people, so all the things we do in the physical world, how do we translate that into the digital world? And that was a really key kind of design direction for me to take, which was great.
And Flickr was the first place I saw geotagging of photos. I remember that Flickr let you put your photos on a map. It let you locate where the photos were. There were some various different experiments out of Yahoo research at some point that did stuff with that.
Yeah.
And no one had ever put a photo in a map.
Is that right? Wow.
That I remember. Like, I don't remember seeing here's a social list of here's all the photos on the maps.
Yeah.
And I remember one design project to show the difference between the photos that tourists versus residents take of cities.
Yeah. That was work by Erica Fisher, I can't even remember when that came out now, maybe around 2008 or 9 or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was able to presume who people were based on the
Like the length of time in which they took photos and
yeah, but also kind of right. So if I'd taken photos over the course of 2 years in this one place, chances are I lived there.
Yep.
But she also did fantastic work around just clusters of photography, and yeah, she was able to create these beautiful visualizations of cities all over the world that sort of suggested which areas were popular with tourists.
Flickr didn't just do the individual social feed thing of my photos, but you really sort of dove into groups.
Thinking about that concentric circle idea, it was always an onion skin in my mind of me, people I know, things that I'm into, and the universe.
Yeah.
So groups allowed you to have this ability to share things with like-minded folks who you don't know, like my macrame group, or like one of the oldest groups on Flickr that I made is called Recipes to Share, which is just a photo of the food you cooked and how to cook it, And I don't really know any of the people in that group, but it's the structure of a group is it has what's called a photo pool and then a bunch of discussion threads. And that's all. It's very, very simple in structure.
And were there moderators or group owners in them, or?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that's crucial. Yeah, there are 3 grades of member: simple member, moderator, and administrator.
Flickr was one of the places that brought the bulletin boards and the sort of the text-based forums, which had moderators.
Yep.
And into the visual world of social media. And I know that you did a lot of work on trying to figure out how to make that moderation healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if you could talk about sort of this is before the concept of trust and safety exists, before it's a profession.
Yeah.
But you were trying to figure out how to have contextual moderation.
Well, and the entire service, actually. It's important, again, to come back to the genesis, which was from Game Neverending, because, as I said, I think that community was well bonded and polite and friendly, and because the initial launch of Flickr.com happened within that context, when new people would join, I mean, literally, Katerina Fake and I would greet every single new person who entered the game and just say, hi, welcome to the party, can I get you a drink or whatever, and really put effort into personally connecting with new people. So I think that's disappeared completely on the internet now, I think, everything is kind of automated or whatever. But then, we also did things that were actually inventions, like, Heather Champ and I wrote this document called the Community Guidelines, and I'm pretty sure that was the first one. Or if not, it was, very close to being the first one. And it sort of was a list of do's and don'ts. And one of my favorite was, don't be creepy. You know that guy. Don't be that guy. I mean, it's funny, but and also very clear, if you are that guy, you're not welcome, Yeah. And I think it's important in any community, online or off, to be able to have rules to engage with, and for the moderators of that community to be able to say, actually, no, this isn't suitable. We don't want that.
And it's fascinating the way in which Flickr, for the most part, managed to maintain that thread of this is the community and these are the ways of working, because Twitter itself started out of the Flickr community. Mm-hmm. Like all of the early Twitter users had been Flickr users.
Yeah.
If I go and I want to find photos of the early days of Odeo and Twitter, they weren't on Twitter because Twitter didn't support photos. We were all posting it on Flickr.
Yeah.
But somehow Twitter lost that thread, lost that individual welcomes and connections to people, and it ended up becoming this sort of space of argument.
Yeah. I mean, I have a theory about that, which is to do with the fact that, you can establish an identity on Flickr.com that's visual and about your life.
Uh-huh.
So if anything, people who didn't publish photos or were anonymous were suspicious because you couldn't
because they're not presenting themselves.
Yeah. And so if you contrast Flickr and Twitter on that angle, you don't really, it's sort of on Twitter, you don't know that everybody's not a dog kind of thing.
Well,
but on Flickr,
because primarily you're interacting with people with there's out of context single replies to some sort of thread. And
I mean, you can look them up and see what else they're writing about and stuff, but you can't see the outfit that they put on this morning or their wedding or, things like that. So, I mean, that's just a theory, but I think, the sort of...
I see that's like a lacking of a bit of humanizing.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And, I mean, I think another point to make is that the team was also present in the service.
Yeah.
Along those lines. Like, I would post photos of my lunch and going to, get a burger with Cal in Vancouver or, that kind of thing, so people could see us. And even in the very early days, we set up web forums. That was kind of old school move by Katarina. And there were Flickr Central, Flickr Help, and... I forget what the other one, Flickr Ideas.
Yeah.
And that was also a place where the staff were present and participating and, enjoying the chat.
Yeah.
And so that kind of thing, I mean, to contrast with now, that sort of thing's been sort of scaled out, hasn't it? Or something. It's very difficult to perform that kind of personal work in a really, really big system.
To gain an audience on Flickr, it didn't feel like gaining an audience. It didn't feel like building an audience or a lot of followers. It felt like cultivating a community.
Yeah.
That you were community organizers. And partially that's because there were very minimal levels of algorithms and you mostly connected people through groups and their photos.
And who they knew.
Yeah.
How they decided to interpret this platform. My actual family, the Oates family, they all had accounts because I was one of the early people, know. And now that's a unique set of pictures that represent our shared life, and that's great. And I hear lots of stories from people saying, oh, I looked at Flickr for the first time in a million years and wow, there's a whole archive of my, the early noughties hiding there that I'd forgotten
I go and
about.
I can see all the pictures of my kids.
Yeah.
When they were first born and
teeny.
Teeny.
Yeah. And I think that's really special. I think that's very special.
Flickr had private groups, though. There was, one of the things I think was really interesting is Flickr did not have a policy of banning adult content. You had this way in which you saw Flickr as being like a city, and that because it was like a city, it has different neighborhoods that have different norms, and cities have red light districts. But you did something that I think people don't realize when they talk about how do you moderate the internet or how we deal with the internet today, which is that we were very sophisticated in having people not stumble on adult content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And letting people maintain distinct aspects of themselves to different communities. I wonder if you could talk about the way in which you prevented context collapse from happening.
Most of the kind of ways that you can set up your account had a variety of levers that you could apply.
Yeah.
So in a single photos case, you could make that available to a certain type of person. Anybody, people you know, friends, family, or totally private.
Yeah.
So that's the first line.
Which Instagram doesn't have. It just has this sort of public-private thing.
Yeah.
And they push people to be public because they want the monetization. They want the virality.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it comes from a very social position,
Mm-hmm.
And photos are quite volatile objects, or they can be. Like if you drop a photo of a dick in a place where it shouldn't be, that's an attack, that's a harmful act. So we got photos, they have settings, but all kinds of other sort of subsidiary settings, like who can comment on my stuff, who can curate my stuff, those sorts of things you can also control. But you're right, we added groups as this sort of external structure that was about people of like mind sharing stuff that they all wanted to see, and we were pretty clear, and actually Heather Champ was sort of pivotal in this thinking. We didn't want to be the arbiters of what was right and wrong because that was up to the city to negotiate, the platform to negotiate, humans to negotiate with each other, And if there was an action that happened in the community that you didn't like, you had the agency to get out of there.
Yeah.
And, the rules of engagement of using the service also had I don't want to say power here, but, had the kind of reference point about what the community was sort of into, There was all these kinds of levers, I'd imagine it, like community spaces of various types of interest and social settings on top that kind of let you have this quite rich existence from multiple points of view.
For me, it was the first place that I saw social media where you could go into one place and it felt like a dive bar. If you could go in one place, it felt like an art gallery. You could go in one place and it felt like someone's house where you're seeing the photos, or in other places, which is like a club. And each of those places had different vibes, had different norms, have different things, because Flickr wasn't trying to monetize based on ads. but monetized based on user subscriptions and pro accounts.
Yeah.
There wasn't a need to collapse all of those contexts, and it was fine that they sort of existed in semi-obscurity.
Yeah, yeah. And interesting, isn't it, the way that the pictures would make you feel?
Yeah.
Like we didn't, as the designer of the service, it was very interesting to try to find a flexible container that allowed people to express their vibe, without it becoming GeoCities or whatever. Not that GeoCities is bad, but, GeoCities was a crazy mess. And
It's a crazy mess.
Yeah.
My friend, Kyle Drake, launched this site, I don't know if you heard about it, called NeoCities. And NeoCities is a rebuilding of GeoCities, all open source and everything else.
Great.
And it is as garish and like flashing. Expressive as the original. And the amazing thing is no one talks about NeoCities.
Oh.
They get millions and millions of views and millions of people use it. And it is just like the original one and no one talks about it. It's just a part of the internet that exists today.
People are just doing their thing,
Yeah. And in many ways, we'll get to how Flickr evolved and where it comes to now. But Flickr today is this thing that just is a nice thing that people use, and the people who use it pay for it.
Yeah. Well, some people that use it pay for it.
But enough people, like, and the NeoCities is the same way. Like, enough people pay for it that it covers the servers and the staff and the time and the effort to keep it going.
Yeah. I think there's all kinds of different value with Flickr as well, like fondness and memory and nostalgia and family and collections and these kinds of things you can't place a dollar value on. But in my experience, people who use Flickr, it's very precious to them, because it has history in it about you, and I think that's really, really important.
And people really strongly identified with Flickr.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was amazing is that people would get together in local groups all over the world.
Yeah.
All of these networks of local groups. Yeah. And not just talk about Flickr, but then take their cameras out and go on walks taking photos together.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think the photo walks took a bit of a hit during COVID, but I know that the company's interested to fire them back up because they were wonderful,
But so took a hit 15 years into them happening.
Yeah. I'm still a member of a few local groups, keeping an eye out. But yeah, some meetups still happen and have sort of rekindled after the great disease. But yeah, great virus, I should say.
Flickr was so early, and it was founded in a moment in which there was not a lot of Silicon Valley money. There was not a lot of investment money.
Yeah.
It's originally a Canadian company that got some funding from the Canadian government for a startup, and always has this sort of half Vancouver, half San Francisco thing. I'm wondering if you could talk about the way in which Flickr decided to sell itself to Yahoo and what it was like going from being this sort of scrappy, alternative, creative things to being stuck inside a very big company.
I mean, I can try.
Yeah.
I wasn't a business owner, so it's not really for me to speak about why the investment was sought and so forth.
Yeah.
But so I joined the group in 2003
Yeah.
To work on Game Neverending, and I was an employee. I was designing game widgets and stuff.
Yeah.
And then we decided to pivot to make Flickr.com. And you're right, something struck in 2004 where people, I don't know, it just lit a fuse and people began to share content.
It was exciting.
It was exciting. I think one other exciting thing was that we were changing the interface all the time.
Yep.
So you would come the next day and something would, you'd have to figure out what the new bit was or whatever. So we were working very quickly and in public, and I guess that attracted the attention of the Silicon Valley people who, want to buy talent. And essentially, I think this was an acqui-hire.
Yeah.
The team, I think, was about 10 people when we were acquired in 2005. And that's also a date that lots of people forget, is that actually Flickr.com was independent for 1 year before it moved to Yahoo. People often tell me, oh, Yahoo killed it or whatever.
Yeah.
No, actually, it really helped it grow.
Yeah.
So anyway, this small team, I think 9 of us in the end moved from Vancouver down to San Francisco and inside the purple and yellow beast in Sunnyvale at the time. We were able to grow. I'd say we grew fairly modestly within the Yahoo context. Like we weren't, I think the team probably maxed out, at least when I was around, at under 50 people.
Yep.
You know, and for such a huge service, you know, that's an interesting fact. I think that the team didn't explode and get huge.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think working on the backbone of Yahoo.com, who really knew how to serve stuff to the internet, that was a bonus of the acquisition, you know, helped us serve images to many, many more people, you know. So I think that sort of infrastructure
kept it running fast and easy, and servers, servers were much hard, like infrastructure, like cloud didn't exist.
Yeah.
And so building out a service that was fast and good and reliable in 2005 was hard.
Tough, yeah. Yeah, so the ops crew at Flickr, I think, did some world-class work. You know, John Allspar and Peter Norby and others, you know, they really were bloody good at their game, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was kind of interesting. I mean, there was this terrible phrase getting passed around called the Flickrization of Yahoo, which meant that, you know, Stuart and Katerina in particular had to sort of, you know, proselytize inside the company about how to do good community. Unfortunately, that takes charm, which is difficult to scale out or, you know, productize. You'd have to talk to them about what that was like. But for me, I was able to just sort of keep my head down and do the stuff, you know.
I actually left Odeo and went and worked with Katerina over at Brickhouse.
Oh, great.
I don't know if you knew that, but because I was convinced that it was, you know, Yahoo had, you know, bought Upcoming and Flickr and these, you know, and Delicious, and was going to be a home for the social web.
Yeah.
It was so promising.
Yeah. And what happened?
Well, you know, that's a great question. I think what happened was there was normal Yahoo and there were all these cool kids. And normal Yahoo was a really big established business. Yeah. And the cool kids are off here getting lots of press. And eventually social media does take off and become a really big deal. But I think the middle management at normal Yahoo basically went to war against the sort of Web 2.0 cool kids.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's
a different read then, but I mean, interesting. Well, I'm kind of curious about the business dynamics of which bits of acquisitions to absorb and when.
Yep.
You know, like Yahoo Photos, a massive photo sharing service, closed in 2007. Yep. And there was this sort of harrowing procedure for Yahoo Photos people to just shove their stuff into Flickr instead. And, you know, working on that was very interesting. It sort of became this weird single...
Well, they have two totally different cultures of users.
Absolutely. That's a key point. You know, all these, a huge influx of new members coming into Flickr.com.
Yep.
I think that was actually a bit destabilizing. I mean, I can't prove that, but, you know, it was two cities coming together at a soccer match or something, you know, just going...
When we know that dynamic of when a flood of new people join a social platform, it's the eternal September thing.
Yeah.
You know, it used to be at universities that Usenet, the sort of original internet forum, would have this September problem. And it was because new students, freshmen, would join and they would get an internet account and they would find these Usenet forums. And then for the first month of September, they would kind of not know the cultural behavior. They wouldn't know the norms and the way they behave. And so they would just sort of stumble rough rod over everything.
Yeah.
Until by the end of September, all of the old Usenet people had enough conversations with everybody and taught these new people how to work.
Very generously.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was a lot of work. It was a lot of social labor.
Yeah.
And then AOL comes along and connects all of AOL to Usenet.
Oh, wow.
Time.
Oh, I missed that.
And then it was this eternal September.
Yeah, right.
And Usenet never recovered.
Yeah.
Like when it was just once a year for a month, only college university freshmen, it was enough that the community could absorb everyone and teach people the norms. And when it was all of AOL, like tens of millions of people or whatever it was, it didn't.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah. And with Yahoo Photos being sort of merged into Flickr, you had a similar kind of cultural merging that had to happen.
I agree. I think that was a big shockwave, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, coming back to the sort of what does the acquirer take of the acquired?
Yeah.
You know, I think you could look at any acquisition in the last 20 years and wonder about the dynamics there. You know, I think that's because we were only a team of 10 people joining a company, I think, of about 10,000, you know, so it was even that was a bit of a mismatch. And, you know, the pressure on the team to perform in that kind of scenario was a bit strange. And it was, I don't know, I'm speaking personally here, but I you know, I like small, charming things. I don't like scaled things. And, you know, I'm not saying it denatured it per se, but, you know, I wonder about the sliding doors moment where that hadn't happened. I wonder what would have, how.
Yeah, I mean, I often wonder because, you know, I'm friends with Kellen Elliott McRae, who was working on Flickr.
Yeah.
And Kellen often talked about the conflict between the Flickr team that was deeply rooted in its users and wanted to have the pro accounts that people could subscribe to, and the Yahoo marketing people who wanted to sell ads.
Yeah.
And just this cultural gap.
Yeah.
That existed.
I mean, I actively remember like resisting moving my mouse to design an ad space on the photo page or whatever. I'm just like, no. Yeah. No, it's the same. I feel the same way. But, you know, then again, the real positive of the acquisition was this, you know, powerful infrastructure, which allowed the service to grow as big as it did.
If you hadn't been acquired by Yahoo, then there would have been a desperate need to find the resources to provide that infrastructure to scale it. And we know from situations like Friendster and other social platforms that there are companies that had all the promise in the world and social platforms that had all the promise in the world and didn't figure out how to scale it, didn't keep the servers on and everything running.
Yeah.
And people left it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. Yeah. I mean, but what about if it was something like an investment model instead of an acquisition model? You know?
I think there is something fundamentally broken with the model of Silicon Valley of VC companies that found companies that either have to grow big to go an IPO like themselves or get acquired.
I agree. I think it's super destructive and I wish we'd stop doing it.
And we have all these incentives that align around it. And yet there's tons of valuable things in the world that are sustainable parts of the economy that people should use that don't need to end up in those two places.
I agree. Yeah, I've been fantasizing about what it would mean to design a business that was profitable with 10 staff and for that to be a happy and healthy thing. You know, all this hypergrowth bullshit is just, I mean, it's bullshit. It's gambling and I just don't like it at all. And it's the antithesis of building a healthy, happy community. Because you have to make weird choices about how you measure success. And I measure success with depth, not breadth. And, you know, if you're talking about hypergrowth, the only stats available to you are about extreme numbers, which only people who are rich like, or computers like, you know, I don't really respond to huge numbers. You know, I don't think they're interesting to the people who are in the platform actually trying to enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at Meta's earnings and they made like $20 billion at a quarter of profit. And I'm just like, I don't actually have any way of understanding.
It's obscene.
Like, I don't have any other way of understanding. I don't have any understanding of the value of it, like what you're trying to accomplish. And in order to do that, they have to be operating in every country, in every language, and like the community building and the trust and safety and all these other things, and the power of those algorithms. Those are all so much harder to deal with at that scale.
Yeah. Well, they're easy to remove though, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I've literally heard Facebook describe itself as a nation state. You know, it's got that many people in that service that it feels like it has some political sway, you know? I mean, that's a whole other conversation which I don't really feel qualified to have or enter.
There's a book, Careless People, which is about Facebook and the growth of Facebook, and the author, her job is to do the public relations.
Oh, wow.
What and her name is escaping me right now. But before they had a public relations person, like government relations. And she talked about starting in 2008, 2007, where the governments of the world don't care about it. And it's trying to get Zuckerberg in the room and trying to get him to meet people and no one cares and anything else. To him being invited in there to eventually having the power to shape who becomes president, who runs the governments and things. And
It's mad.
we want the internet to be democratizing, but that's not a few people in charge is not a better situation.
I agree.
One of the terms that I heard from the Flickr team back in the day is NIPSA.
Mm-hmm.
And, that I believe is not safe in public areas or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's the positive prefiguration of what becomes shadow banning. But it wasn't the negative bad shadow banning. Like when something was labeled as NIPSA, it was, this is adult content or this is content that we don't want people stumbling upon. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could talk about how you ended up with this idea of tagging content and labeling it and choosing what ends up in search and what people discover.
Yeah, it's mostly because of dick pics.
Yeah.
No, I think there was a really hilarious and horrific moment that happened at a public event in Amsterdam. It was run by this fantastic studio. I think it was called Mediamatic.
Yeah.
And they'd made a display using the fantastic Flickr API that was there from the start to show photos tagged with certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And God, this is 20 years ago now, but it was something like the room where the event happened would be like, okay, let's choose a tag to show photos of. And I think the public got wind of it. And so all of a sudden there were dicks on the wall at this event in Amsterdam, and we're just like, oh God, this is not a good result. So we came up with this formula, which is called T to P, time to penis. And it was sub-second in some cases. Anyway, I'm being
so like once you knew that other people would see it and you were projecting out to the world, it was like,
I'll just
how
put my dick
long?
There. Yeah.
How long is it going to take before people start posting dick pics?
Yeah, and so, it was not long.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I might be getting the timeline a bit mixed up here, but I'm pretty sure that's when NIPSA emerged, which stands for not in public search areas, I think.
Yeah.
And it was just a way for staff to go, okay, not this guy or not that guy, so we'd take the dicks off the wall at Mediamatic,
Yeah.
And
because only a small percentage of people are doing it.
You'd be surprised how many dick pics fly around the internet. But yes, in general, yes, it would only be a couple of bad actors who just felt like the world needed to see a picture of their dick, which is obviously lunacy. But anyway, NIPSA was a kind of a precursor to a more sophisticated system that we designed, which was about making the users agents so they could make a combination of safety and privacy as they set who could see their photos. So safety was about safe, moderate, and restricted photos.
Yep.
It's a bit like safe search works. And then, you use that social combination of anyone can see it, contacts, friends, family, or totally private. And those two things together allowed actually quite a complex way to share photos with whoever you wanted to share them with, And it gave a way for folks whose content might not be suitable for public areas, a way to share them with friends who wanted to see them, And again, that sort of comes back to that point that we didn't want to arbitrate which photos were right in what context, because that's too big for any one company to do. That has to be negotiated.
But it was so much more sophisticated a concept of free speech than the debates we end up having later.
Yeah, I agree. And it was also a relief because we could say, in my experience, meeting folks who were in adult communities, in my experience, they don't want to offend anyone. They just want to do their stuff, And I was not the person to say, actually, no, that content's not okay here. I don't want, like I said, a group of 10 people that's not what they should do.
Yeah.
So, I think it was really exciting to see that folks were able to use this rule set to be good people in the service. They were able to maintain that strong community by not putting their dick pics on the wall in Amsterdam,
Yeah.
And that was great. And every now and again, something would come or happen, or there'd be a bad actor or whatever. But the combination of those settings that allowed you to do that and the community guidelines and a fantastic customer and community team, those three things meant that it felt like a safe space.
Yeah. So many ways, it's such a shame because we had that model before Facebook and Instagram and all these other things and Twitter got big.
Yeah.
The people building the first versions of that and scaling them, they were all aware of how Flickr worked because they were all using Flickr. And yet somehow, instead of building this thing that lets communities come together and curate and gives you control over what you say and everything else, there was this, chase growth at all costs. Let's throw everything in there and let the algorithm figure it out. It's funny because now people critique it and they're like, if only they had known. And your work at Flickr shows that they all knew.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were using it.
Because they were using it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm interested in this idea of friction as well in this context, because like I said, when Katerina and I would greet everybody personally, there's a lot of friction there. I mean, it was positive and happy and enjoyable at the time, but that's, that kind of thing shouldn't scale because it's about personal connection, right?
Yeah.
You can't scale that.
Yeah.
But now these services that we see online are so slippery. Before you know it, you're in the service and doing stuff and publishing things. Just an example, like, those AI face recognition things that turn you into a cute bunny or whatever.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you've shared your portrait with a company and you don't know what the hell they're going to do with it.
Exactly.
So there's such a huge gap between those two experiences, right? And I think this one is the one that humans normally prefer.
Yeah, we want that agency. We want that human agency. We want the human connection. We're wired to work and think of community.
Yeah.
And we've found this sort of way of getting this massive audience that loses that.
Ugh, it's mundane and inane all at once, I think. And I feel like people are responding negatively to that now. They're like, I don't want my content going there. I want control. I want da-da-da-da. So I think, I'm excited actually that people are sort of saying, actually, no, I'm not going to do that because that sucks. And interestingly, I think Flickr's, like, I joke that Flickr's a bit of a grandma of the internet because it's 21 years old and it's charming and people are fond of it. But I think people are looking again for services that take care and aren't just exploitative, And for me, that's a good sign.
I think it's really critical. I think it's an important sign. And part of the reason I wanted to talk to you is so many of these stories about this other alternative that it still exists. Like, it's still live. You still use it. Millions of people use it, but got so much right. And then people who came afterwards got it wrong.
Yeah.
And
what do you think the turning point was? Like, how would you explain that?
I think the turning point was when really Facebook discovered that they could use these user profiles and these demographics and do these ads that got really good engagement and really good clicks. And then discovered that they don't have to be honest with anyone about the clicks and about the views and everything else.
Boo.
So, like, they discovered that they could make a lot of money off of it, and they discovered that they could get media companies to show up. And they also discovered that they don't have to be honest. They could lie and then just apologize every time they got caught lying. And then they're like, oh my God, there's a lot of money to be here.
Yeah.
Because when Flickr was created, it was not like, there was no idea that it was somehow a lot of money.
No. We tried to charge a reasonable amount for a subscription, I mean, obviously we're a brand new company, a baby company as well, and every baby company wonders about its business model and stuff. But subscription models were popular at the time. So was the freemium idea, so you can upload a certain amount of pictures for free just to try the service and stuff,
It's really sad that we moved away from it. And I think some of the stuff that we see with Mastodon, the Fediverse, Nostr, Blue Sky, all these other social protocols is a way of trying to get back to some of that. Is like, how do we create something that's community controlled? How do we say something that cultivates the commons? Which brings me to ask you about your work in museums with the Creative Commons. So, Flickr had this Flickr Commons project, which was about working with people who had large photo sets and getting them to upload them and tag them and organizing them. And you went out and worked with museums. And you were part of the Flickr team that really embraced the idea of Creative Commons and embraced the support of it where you could tag it. I wonder if you could talk about that process and then the way in which you've worked with museums all the way to today.
Yeah.
And the Flickr Foundation, which you now run, in terms of getting things out of closed archives, out of museums, and onto public platforms.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll paint a little timeline first just to locate everybody. So I think Flickr.com adopted Creative Commons pretty early on. I want to say maybe 2005 or 6. And Creative Commons is basically a copyright licensing structure that allows the creator to open up their material for uses in certain ways. So you can use my photo if you attribute it to me, for example. Even today, the Flickr collection of Creative Commons licensed photos is one of the biggest so far, which is great, And it was the work of Larry Lessig and others who designed that sort of mechanic to open up copyrighted materials, which is just a great move in general.
Like this sort of legal jujitsu that says, like, instead of using copyright law to restrict how you do it and license and everything else, you sort of lock it open and contribute to building a commons.
Yeah. So I would describe Creative Commons sort of bluntly as a type of license. Yeah, so in about 2007, somehow I got an email from Michelle at the Library of Congress who was writing to say, we're looking for a Web 2.0 partner to share our photos with, and we think Flickr's the one, but we aren't able to claim a copyright license to our materials in a lot of cases, so we can't publish it under Creative Commons or rights reserved or something, so we need to figure out if there's an alternative. I figured out I learned that the library, loc.gov, they'd had 10 million photos on their website for a decade. And they use this other little thing, which is called an assertion, not a license. And this says, to the best of our knowledge, there are no known copyright restrictions associated with this photo. And we're the Library of Congress, so we're pretty sure we can say with authority that it's okay for us to share this photo that was taken in 1910 or whatever. And that was a moment for me realizing that if we made a program at Flickr that also adopted that assertion, other institutions around the planet who had these things that were like orphaned in their collections, they could unlock them too. So we made the Flickr Commons program, and that launched in 2008 with the Library of Congress as its first partner, which was just magnificent, and that year, 2008, was just fantastic. We brought on about, 30 new institutional members who shared their photography. The Flickr community loved it and actually would help the institutions by describing the photos and in some cases identifying things like the location they were taken, who was in them, the events surrounding them, stuff like that. This really important contextual metadata about these historic photos. So, and the program's still running, Flickr Commons. There's over 100 institutions participating now, from the Library of Congress all the way to very, very little archives run by one person, that's where my heart lies, is with the little e's. That's Creative Commons and Flickr Commons. At the end of 2008, unfortunately, I was let go by Yahoo.com in some kind of decimation process.
I was let go at the same time.
Hey, congrats.
Yes.
That sucked really hard. But then I know this is a bit of a long time frame, but in 2017, I think it was, Yahoo was acquired by Verizon, the big media company, and some bean counter in Verizon, and I say that with disrespect, looked at Flickr as
why did we own this thing?
Yeah, what's this doing? It wasn't, I don't think it was making any kind of huge profit, and they were, the proposal was to delete it because it wasn't a performing service, And luckily, there were some white knights at Yahoo who let that news out, and SmugMug picked up the signal and acquired Flickr from Yahoo in 2018.
And essentially saved it.
Saved it from deletion, which is a fantastic move. And actually, if you look back in history, that taking of an important collection into an institution has happened quite a lot. That's how the British Museum was formed, in fact, took the collections of 4 wealthy gentlemen and made a museum out of it. So maybe unbeknownst to the McCaskill brothers, they've actually done that same move, but with a digital resource. Anyway, and then 2020 happened. I got an email from Ben McCaskill at SmugMug saying, hey, we really like Flickr Commons. Would you like to come back and do that again? Or, sort of reinvigorate it. And I said, that sounds great. And then I proposed the creation of Flickr.org, the Flickr Foundation. That was our mission is to keep Flickr pictures visible for 100 years. So it's a statement that this is an important cultural collection that we've amassed almost by benign neglect. But, there's tens of billions of images of humans and Earth now hiding in this social media platform. And my argument with the foundation is that we need to treat that with care.
We absolutely. One of the projects I've been playing with is sort of digging through the old Vine archives and everything else. And
amazing.
And Vine didn't have that.
Right. Right.
Vine never had a Vine Foundation. Mm-hmm. And so there was this community project archive team that sort of archived willy-nilly random parts of it and put it on the Internet Archive. And the Internet Archive tried to archive a bunch of it. Once Twitter got sold to Elon Musk, they lost, because there wasn't an institution like the Flickr Foundation created. It was just some random thing of who was maintaining the servers and what was it going on and why was it happening. Yeah. And when the domain names expired and the servers went offline, the files all disappeared.
Yeah. No, I mean, an analog I like to use is about maritime safety.
Yeah.
Like at the foundation, we've developed this tool called Data Lifeboat.
Yep.
So if the worst should happen, which it's not going to anytime soon, but if Flickr.com did go down, this tool called Data Lifeboat would help move photos out of the service in a well-designed and resolute way.
Yep.
That's the idea. And this is a direct play on maritime safety. There's not a vessel on the ocean today that doesn't have some form of life preservation in it, whether it's a shitty old life jacket or, lifeboats for every passenger, and that's law.
Yep.
You can't have a ship on the ocean without that.
Yep.
But web platforms don't have anything like that. There's no warranty or requirement or anything in those terms of use that everybody signs up for. So even Flickr.com, they can delete anything they want for any reason at any time. And that's not a great way to build history or heritage, And
it's not acknowledging the tremendous cultural and social value of these platforms,
right?
Because they're businesses that they operate on the rules as if they were just another business, and there's so much more than that. And so I'm just really glad that you're doing that work.
Thanks.
And I want more people to know about the Flickr Foundation, because it should be a model for all of these other platforms, and all of these other spaces by which we are creating important cultural works.
Yeah,
but the companies that create them and run them, they don't have any legal obligation to it.
I do
not like the maritime laws. Like eventually with maritime laws, initially there was no requirement for a life jacket, and then we saw people drown, and then we built requirements for lifeboats.
I mean, I've actually been to the Royal Maritime Museum in Greenwich to learn about the history of lifeboats. And sailors used to decide not to learn how to swim so they would die more quickly this is like 1600s or whatever, but the first lifeboats, the life jackets were made out of cork and they were kind of shitty. And then the first lifeboat had cork actually in the boat. It was designed to be buoyant. I could talk for a long time about that. But there's no sense that these things are built to last.
Yeah.
They're just built to make money, And I don't necessarily equate that with malevolence, by the way. That's just a corporation's nature. Like not everybody's evil in this mix, right?
Yeah.
Having a sense that this is an important collection that we should preserve, I think we need to make that signal much louder.
Yeah, we need to build ourselves digital lifeboats.
Right? I think so.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.